Alright, let's talk push sticks. Let me start off by saying that I named this video based off the original Jay Bates video that I personally watched back in 2014 whenever I was looking for a push stick design for resawing. The first time I resawed was actually on a table saw, and I made this push stick specifically for the task, but it quickly turned into my go-to push stick ever since. I absolutely love its wide body for stability on top of the material, its long footprint so it's easy to apply downward pressure as well as forward, and the fact that it's sacrificial so I can run it right through the blade if I'm cutting something thin. Now, I love this push stick, but the one negative I can find about it is the one length tailstock. When I switch to cutting something thinner, the back end of the push stick will still catch it, but the back end is up and off the table saw deck. And this got me thinking of a way to make an adjustable tailstock push stick. This way I can quickly switch from cutting 3/4 inch material and have full support down to 1/8 inch material and still have that full support. Now that you see what I'm going for, let me show you the process on how I got here. For this, I started off with a chunk of 2x6 and laid out my lines to cut. Oh, and I also added in a second handle. I like the idea of having a push stick that can be used at the table saw or jointer. And for me, I want the location to be in different places depending on which tool I'm at. I cut my board to length so I could have access to the end where the tailstock would be placed. I stuck it in my super jaws to set up and drill a hole. And I wanted this hole to be really straight, but since it wouldn't fit in my drill press, I had to use a hand drill. A really good trick to get a straight hole though is to drill a hole in a scrap piece of wood over at the drill press, this way you know it's straight, and then clamp this drill guide on top of the piece that you want a hole in. And this will give your drill bit over 1 inch of straight hole to keep you from going off track. My first approach was to glue in a nut that would be recessed in the body of the push stick, and then thread a bolt through the tailstock and into this nut. However, before putting metal in the body, I first wanted to cut that dado that would allow the tailstock to move up and down. I also wanted to do it before cutting out the body shape so that I would have a larger flat surface to move over the router table and make this cut. For the meantime, I started fabricating the tail. I first needed to get a slot cut in that would slip over a bolt and let it slide up and down. I quickly made a jig, just from scraps, that would hug the piece of material that I would use for the tailstock, and that I could place on my drill press table. I used a square to line up this jig squarely to the table, and then made a series of holes to create this slot. I was pretty precise on the start and stop of this slot because I wanted it to dictate the max of 3/4 inch overhang down to 1/8 of an inch, but not let me exceed either limit. Now to take away some of the outer material and create a tenon to fit into the dado of the body. My straight bit in the router table was still set up to the same height from cutting that dado, so I used it to take away this side material. It's worth noting that I left my piece long just to give myself more material to hold on to during this step. And here is the finished tailstock. Now let's combine the two. First was to glue the nut in the hole in the body I drilled earlier. To do this, I used some Titebond 2, which does an excellent job at attaching metal to wood. I threaded the nut on the bolt while doing this to not only give an easy way to drop it in, but to also protect the threads from getting glue on them. Once that was dry, then I worked on getting the rest of the body into shape. First using a bandsaw to cut the profile straight lines out, then clamping my 4-inch belt sander upside down to my workbench. I love that feature. Rolled my dust collection cart over, then started not only truing up the straight edges I just cut, but also adding in a few nice curves here and there to just soften the look. To cut the handles, I hogged away most of the material with a Forstner bit at the drill press, then used my spindle sander to clean up the rest. Now, keep in mind folks, this is just a push stick. You can knock one of these out in under 10 minutes if you keep it simple. But I was enjoying myself and wanted to shine her up. Alright, by this time the glue was dry, so I attached the tailstock to the body, and here was where I realized my mistake on gluing in the nut. See, that hex head is not easy to grab onto and twist, and it must be quick and easy or it's worthless as I know I won't bother using it. So on to prototype number 2. Since I was making changes, I decided to combine the two handles and save a little bit on space. I thought the first push stick came out a little too tall. By joining two handles into one, I was able to shave off some height on the overall design. I did everything else the same though. Oh, well, except this time I glued the head of the bolt in the hole so that once I placed on the tailstock, I could use a wing nut to tighten and loosen it. And this worked out so well. I was really pleased with it. However, I was still enjoying myself and the process, so I repeated everything again, except for this time I made it from walnut. Now, I already know it's coming. In fact, I bet some of you have already commented before watching this part of the video. Lots are going to point out that metal shouldn't be anywhere near a SawStop. If you aren't familiar with the brand, SawStop is the only saw on the market that has flesh sensing technology. If your finger or hand comes in contact with the blade, it will do three things: kill power, retract the saw down into the body, and also discharge a brake to immediately stop the blade from rotating further and mangling you. I've been running a SawStop since 2014 and using this push stick with metal screws in it for that duration, and I've never had a problem with it. Because when you're setting the height of your blade, you're only supposed to have about a tooth height above the thickness of the material. So if you're setting up properly, then you should never get into these metal screws. But let's go ahead and err on the side of caution, shall we? For my third and final version of this push stick, I ordered some plastic hardware to use in it. I did everything else the same, but this time I glued in the plastic bolt and have a plastic wing nut to thread on the tailstock. And you can see, I can very quickly go from 3/4 inch material down to something thinner. I don't have to measure, I just have to slightly loosen, set the push stick on my stock, push the tail down, and then tighten. Now, since I was already getting fancy, I took it a little bit further by throwing a roundover bit in my router table and softening the feel and look. Then, even propping up the finished push stick to throw a coat of finish on it. Not that it will protect it, because, hello, saw blade wins. But just to see that beautiful grain pop. I was totally gonna leave this as is. However, I just happened to come to Seattle for the week, and Eric is also a YouTuber, big on Instagram, and he is a fine furniture maker artist. So he is gonna show me how to make a sliding dovetail. An option that you might consider is adding a sliding dovetail along the bottom so that you can add a sacrificial piece of material that can be removed whenever it gets chewed up, and this would keep the body cut free. But wait, there's more! Since I was already looking at my push stick collection, I decided to quickly make a caddy that rides along the fence of my SawStop. I saw this on a friend's Instagram and thought it was such a clever idea to keep the push sticks off the fence and wing area and instead organize them so that they can easily be reached for, used, and then put back. To make this, I used some 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch scraps I had in my bin to make a bottom and a few sidewalls. I spaced these apart for my specific collection of push sticks. To avoid using brad nails or bringing out my clamps, I used the quick setting Thick and Quick from Titebond to attach everything to the bottom sheet. Now on the sidewall that will be up against the fence, you want to make this higher than the other sides. That way, when you attach the piece that connects the fence runner to the sidewall, the caddy can sit flush to the table saw deck, but also butt up underneath it to be attached. I went ahead and cut in a simple pocket on the top of this piece as well. A pencil fits nicely here without it wanting to roll off into the blade or work area. It's simple, but great in my opinion. Okay, and that's it for the push stick and the push stick caddy. I will link to Jay Bates' original video. He makes some excellent points on how he originally came up with this long nose, wide footprint push stick. I have the free download to the push stick caddy if you're interested in that. And I think that's it. So I will see you on whatever I'm building next, guys.